The knife is already in his thigh. Han's own cops are on the ground, and their taser hit the wrong man. Jason doesn't stand over him. He grabs what he can reach and drags him outside, into the cold air, into the dark. Then he pulls out his phone and sends the signal. The building goes up behind them, and Han can only watch, injured and on his back, as everything he built turns into fire. But this moment is still weeks away. It starts here. Kang is already on the ground. That's the first thing to understand. Jason didn't just walk into that warehouse. He's been inside it, and Kang has been at the receiving end of it for long enough that his face barely looks like a face anymore. Jason crouches over him, completely calm, telling him the cut on his throat is a light one. Light enough that it'll just make talking difficult rather than impossible. He says it like a courtesy, like he's doing the man a favor by explaining the situation. Then he picks up one of the sashimi knives they keep in the facility. He looks it over. Not a fan of the blade for cutting, he says, but for stabbing, that's another conversation entirely. Kang is screaming curses, threats about what's coming. Jason tells him to stop talking nonsense, and to be grateful. He's going to leave him one working arm so he can still write. That's the deal on the table. One arm. That's the mercy being offered. But here's what Jason's been sitting on the whole time. He already made the call. While he was in here working on Kang, he dialed 112 and reported a lunatic waving a knife and threatening to kill people inside this building. The police will pinpoint the location. They'll show up. And when they arrive at a location like this, when someone's waving a knife and making death threats, they are legally obligated to see what's happening inside. They walk in, and by complete coincidence, the detective Jason has been running with is right there, waiting to personally inspect every corner of this facility. Hard evidence of drug manufacturing comes to the surface. Then the real backup arrives. He lays it out clean. Laws exist to protect people in power, but they're not here to debate the legal system. They're going to use the law to take every single one of these people apart. Kang laughs at him, tells him the boys outside will shut down any cops before they get close. There are too many of them out there. It doesn't matter what Jason called. Jason says the boys outside are late. Something happened to them. And then he mentions, almost as an aside, that he brought someone in to help. Just one person. The door opens. A large man steps through. Broad, suited, smiling with the particular warmth of someone who has genuinely stopped caring about the difference between calm and dangerous. He looks around at what's left of Kang's people and remarks that there are a lot of demons wearing the skin of humans in here. He can't just let that go. He gives the remaining men a choice between a coma and being crippled. Just tell him which one. He'll respect the preference. They don't choose fast enough. He grabs the first one and puts him through a wall. The sound of it carries through the whole building. The next two try to bolt. He headbutts them together with the energy of someone who finds this genuinely entertaining, then tells them they looked like they were in love and really shouldn't be shy about it. The chaos is real, but the violence underneath it is completely professional. He's not going wild. He's just done pretending that any of this requires effort. His name is Jeongho. Jason called him the one person he needed and described him as a little touched in the head. Watching him work, that's not quite right. He's not unstable. He's just removed the part of himself that treats situations like this as anything other than exactly what they are. Jason comes in after and addresses the man still standing, Kang, on his feet in the loose sense of the phrase. Kang tries to bribe Jeongho, doubles Jason's offer, then triples it. Jeongho does the math out loud. Triple of 5,450 won an hour comes out to 16,350 won. He doesn't think that's as big a difference as Kang seems to think it is. Kang loses it completely and screams that he'll give him 30 million won and the drugs too. Just kill Jason right now. Jeongho considers it, then tells him he doesn't need the 3,000 won and suggests he go home. Jason steps in, puts his hands on Kang, looks him in the face, and tells him there's one thing left in this building he can actually depend on. His body. That's it. And now they're going to have a question session. He leans in closer. First question. Everything Kang knows about Han Junwoo. His past, his present from the moment they first met until right now. If Jason doesn't like an answer, nobody knows what he'll do. But if Kang talks, he walks out of here today. Kang's internal calculation is visible on what's left of his face. He knows what Han is. He knows what happens to people who talk about Han. But he also knows what's happening to him right now in this room and what's about to continue happening. He starts trying to negotiate, trying to claim he barely knows anything, that they're just business partners. Jason tells him everybody's afraid of Han. That's understandable. But that's what makes this a priority question. Someone on a revenge path can be terrifying, so can someone in this room. The decision about which one to be more afraid of is entirely Kang's to make. He sends Jeongho to find a full-body mirror from the next room. Kang doesn't understand the request, neither does Jeongho. He asks, what kind of method needs a mirror? Jason says he's been remembering some of the approaches he used in the past. In about 5 minutes, someone's going to bring in a full-length mirror and set it up where Kang can see it clearly, and Kang is going to watch himself in that mirror while body parts come off one by one. Every time something falls, he's going to be sitting there thinking about the information he claimed not to have. Because that's the thing about vision. Seeing it happen to yourself is what makes you understand that this second is actually real. He almost sounds like he's doing Kang a kindness. There's no performance here, no anger, just the quiet confidence of a man explaining a method he's used before and intends to use again. The next scene isn't the warehouse, but a flashback to Jason's past. It's a different room, stone walls, a cell, a prisoner who has been hanging there long enough that the damage is already done in layers. He demands to speak to a superior. Jason tells him the people who needed information from him got tired of waiting and asked for outside help. He operates like a pawn shop, takes things apart piece by piece, makes sure nothing goes unexamined. The prisoner insists he's innocent. Jason references a mass casualty event. Over 3,000 dead, nearly 25,000 injured, 10 years ago. The prisoner invokes God, invokes the cause. Jason tells him there is no God. The strong eat the weak. That's the only rule. And whatever cause this man claims, it was an excuse, a framework they built to let themselves do what they already wanted to do. He's seen it before. So from now on, the prisoner can see it for himself. Outside, Roser stands with Su-hyeon in the corridor. She asks if he's ever watched Jason do this before. Couple of times, he says. When Jason is interrogating someone like this, a real one, someone who did real damage, he gets emotional. That word lands differently once you understand what emotional means for Jason. Inside, the prisoner's left eye is already gone. Clean cut. Roser's work. Medically stabilized enough that the man isn't dying from it yet. Jason tells him to hang in there. He crouches down and looks at the man's remaining eye. He's going to die anyway. They both know that. So the only real question is whether he wants to do it hungry or whether he wants to tell Jason what he knows and get a full meal first. His group's next planned operation, when and where he last had contact with his leader. The prisoner stays silent, then starts to break at the edges, says he doesn't know anything. He already told them everything. Jason reaches for the next step. One leg. That's what's next if the answer doesn't come. He's going to leave one working arm and one leg out of courtesy. That's still more than what's coming otherwise. Then he says something that stops the room. He admits it openly. He's quite fond of this, making people like this die as slowly as possible, taking pieces at a time. He thinks he should start mentioning that in future sessions because it would make him come across as genuinely insane, which would probably be useful. The prisoner calls him a murderous American dog. Jason smiles and says he likes that. He should add it to the phrasing. The prisoner's voice drops to almost nothing. His lips move, praise be to God, and then he drives an axe into his own face. Su-hyeon moves before Jason can. She gets her hands on him, pushes back, tells Roser to get in there. Roser says he can't do emergency surgery without proper equipment. Even if they keep him alive, he won't be in any condition to. Su-hyeon cuts him off. They have a location. Train up. That's the priority now. She fires 2 shots, tells Roser he can write the report however he wants. He starts to say something about morality, about what that means. Su-hyeon looks at him the way you look at someone who just asked a question that has no answer worth giving. She tells him he's a soldier of a country at war. If he wants to maintain his ethical framework, he can hand in his uniform and go home. Clean up and move. Then Grace calls. Grace is Jason's older sister. She operates above his level, and she can tell him to stand down and he has to at least hear her out. She gives them time off before the next operation, tells Jason specifically not to get drunk and start fights with civilians, and to come to their place instead. Haley runs through the hallway and punches him in the stomach the moment he walks in. She's a kid, Grace's daughter, with a missing baby tooth and absolutely no patience for the amount of time that has passed since she last saw him. She calls him a stupid poopy head. He laughs. Not a controlled exhale, not a performance. He actually laughs, and the sound of it is completely different from anything he's produced across the last few days in a concrete room. Su-hyeon gets the same treatment. Grace sends the kid to her room, then sits Jason down, and the warmth of the previous 30 seconds gets put away. She tells him his name came up for the next operation. She was going to pull him. She's not, because the final target is actually there this time. But after this mission, she's done. She's quitting the agency, moving to Korea for a while. Su-hyeon is part of that plan. She wants Jason to think about what he's making his squad deal with, what this life is actually costing him, now that there's a kid in the next room who asks about him every week. Jason calls her a comedian, says she finally got a family, and now she's going soft. She tells him their parents died in that building 10 years ago. He's the one who said they should get strong enough to punish the people responsible. She did exactly that. Now she's choosing something else. He says she changed. He didn't. Even after the final target is down, even after this mission closes, he has zero intention of stopping. He looks at her with a kind of quiet certainty that isn't anger and isn't grief. It's just settled, the way a person looks when they've been living with a decision for so long that it stopped feeling like a decision. She asks him what kind of life that is. He almost smiles, says she's the one calling his life a mess, but she should think about who actually knows his life better. He knows exactly what his life is. It has a perk that no other job in the world offers, being able to legally kill human garbage. Not the mission, not justice, not his parents. The perk, the thing that keeps him showing up. He says it with the ease of someone describing a dental plan, and the worst part is that nothing about it sounds like a lie. Grace takes him down in her own living room. That's not a metaphor. Jason is flat on his back on the floor, with his older sister sitting on his chest, and he is genuinely losing. The moment he tells her to go enjoy her domestic bliss and stay out of his life, something in her decides he needs a physical reminder of what she actually is. She tells him to stop going easy on her. He says he isn't. She says that's the problem with people like him. They always think they're the only ones who can hit. Then she starts hitting. 3 times. His face, his ribs, his back. The husband in the background is frantically apologizing, explaining that he can't stop her when she's like this. Then she stops. Not because she ran out of steam, but because that wasn't the point. She leans down close and her voice drops completely. She tells him she wants him to have a painful, ordinary life. Something normal. Some kind of happiness. She's telling him this as his sister, and as the closest thing he has left to parents, and she's telling him it's enough. They deserve to rest. Jason goes quiet. He tells her that taking out one leader means another rises, then another attack, then more people like them. The only way to win the cycle is to be the last one standing in it. Even if he went to Korea, and he knows he'd go, he'd spend his time beating people he thought deserved it. He'd get worse, not better. Grace laughs a little, says they'll get him a therapist, set up a gym, come for soju at night, late night food. She quotes their mother, "It's a great country full of things to enjoy." Then Haley runs in and immediately starts screaming at Grace for fighting Uncle Jason when only she's allowed to do that. Jason gets a nosebleed. Haley calls him weak. He laughs, and the laugh is genuine, and somewhere in that moment something shifts that wasn't supposed to shift. Because he's looking at this kid and at his sister, and for the first time in a long time, it almost feels like something Grace wanted could actually come true. He knows, looking back, that he shouldn't have let that feeling take root. The empathy that started forming in his chest that night would come back as a dagger later, in ways he couldn't have imagined then. But in that moment, he watches Haley drag him upright, and he quietly decides, the next operation will be his last. That's the memory he's sitting with, when the mirror goes up in the warehouse, and he turns to face Kang. Kang tries one more play, witness protection. He'll go to the police, testify, be a cooperating witness, get protected. Jason tells him he's confused about who gets to make offers right now. The 2 options are answer or get cut to shreds. The mirror comes in, a bit small but workable. Jeongho positions it in front of Kang and steps back. Jason looks at Kang looking at himself and tells him this is the mirror therapy he's earned. He'll be facing every evil deed he's managed to do, and he's going to see it up close. Kang starts raging, and Jason puts the knife through his fingers on the right hand. The scream fills the warehouse. Jeongho, completely unaffected, remarks that Kang's going to have to go southpaw for a while. Kang comes back swinging with threats. When he gets out, he'll cut every finger off everyone around Jason. Jason grabs him and holds his face toward the mirror. Quiet, steady. Look at it. Those are your fingers on your right hand. You will never see them again. Not someone else's hand. Yours. Then he announces he's moving to the left. 4 at once. Kang breaks. He screams that Jason won't get anything if he bleeds out. Jason tells him, nothing? Not at all. He hopes Kang toughs it out to the end. Kang stops. His one remaining eye finds Jason's face, and he asks, genuinely bewildered, what he did to deserve this. What the hell did he ever do to Jason personally? Jason says, the arcade where Kang jumped Sejun. He already settled that account, the night he showed up to Kang's cell with a hood and a hammer. That debt is paid. But there's one more thing. Hajin. Kang didn't leave her alone. And every single piece of garbage who had a hand in what happened to her. Every one of the guys Sejun can't get to himself. Jason is going to make sure that when they hear her name, they get brought within an inch of their lives. All of them. Kang stares. And Jason is already done with him. One night some time ago, Jason was wandering, barely holding himself together, and he kept walking until he found a door that looked like a gym and went inside without taking his shoes off. A dark-haired girl behind the desk looked up from her food and immediately started yelling at him about it. He ignored her. She escalated. He took them off mid-wobble, and his face hit the mat. She panicked, asked if he needed an ambulance, told him he smelled terrible, offered him ramen anyway. He surfaced enough to say he was fine, just dizzy, and then he looked up at her from the floor and said, "Thank you. Thank you so much." She went quiet. Didn't know what to do with that. He said, "I'm so sorry. It's all my fault." Not to her specifically, to the air, to whatever version of himself had let things get to where they were. He said it again, barely audible, face pressed against the mat. "It's all my fault." That girl was Hajin. She watched him sleep for 3 hours. When he woke up, she told him he'd been snoring like something was seriously wrong with his sinuses, and that she was going to call the cops, but he'd been sleeping so deeply, she couldn't bring herself to do it. He apologized again. She told him to get out. He asked the coach, the man running the gym, for one thing before he left. A real fight. No sport rules. Ends when one of them can't continue. The coach had heard the rumors by then. He asked Jason to explain why he hated jiu-jitsu so much. Jason didn't have a clean answer. The real one went something like, if jiu-jitsu actually doesn't work in a real fight, then Grace was wrong. And if Grace was wrong, then maybe none of it is his fault. Maybe he needed someone to stop him, tell him it wasn't anyone's fault, that he needed to snap out of it. The coach punched him. Nothing excessive, just enough to interrupt the spiral, then asked, "Did that do it? Do you want to keep going? Or would you rather talk?" For the first time in a long time, Jason had found someone he didn't want to fight. He asked if he could stay. He stayed until the night Hajin was put in the ICU. The call came fast. A group had beaten her badly. Surgery went well, but she was still unconscious. Jason asked for the building's name, Gold Offitel. He was already out the door, and he arrived shirtless in the dark to find Sejun surrounded by Kisuk's people, barely holding it together, threatening to kill every one of them. Jason stepped in and told him to drop it. Looking at that kid, battered, furious, standing on nothing but the refusal to quit, he understood what the next phase of his life was going to look like. He was going to help this kid get his revenge. He was going to make sure that when it was over, Sejun could be with Hajin, surrounded by people who loved him, and return to something that looked like a normal life. If he could do that, if he could hold the line long enough for that to happen, then maybe that would be the thing that finally counted as enough. His only way of salvation. Back in the warehouse, Kang has one thumb left. Jeongho has been keeping quiet and professional about the whole thing, which somehow makes it worse. He looks at the situation and says it's merciless, says he's super into it. Jason moves to the toes. Kang shatters. He'll tell Jason everything. Everything about Junwoo. Please, give him some first aid first. Jason, talk first, cut later. It comes out in pieces, through blood and panic. Junwoo was on the national jiu-jitsu team, received a lifetime ban after some kind of incident. Nobody talked about what actually happened. Everyone just kept it quiet. Moved into MMA after that. Every single opponent who went up against him ended up crippled and forced into retirement. He cheated openly. He didn't care who saw. He poked Kang's left eye out during one of those fights. Kang tried to keep competing anyway, kept making it worse, eventually couldn't see well enough to fight at all. Then Han came to him with a proposition, a dark web marketplace, steroids, illegal substances, experimental drugs, a fighting league built around high school kids, recruited them in, got them hooked on product, waited until they couldn't function without it, then used them as fighters and labor. Han wanted to throw himself into the ring against those kids personally, an elite grappler against children who'd had their rational minds chemically removed. And Han had someone inside the police force making sure none of it ever surfaced. He offered Kang a factory to run, called it payment for the eye. Kang was furious, but the eye was already gone, and it was good money. Then Kang lets something slip. Something about the kids, the way they stop being people and become tools. He says it with a trace of a smirk, and Jason crosses the room in one movement. Crack, the wall, wham, the floor, the implants scatter. Kang is trembling in the wreckage, barely conscious, blood everywhere. Jason straightens up, says he got what he needed. Anything past that is just noise from a piece of garbage. He tells Jeongho to call the cops and clean up. Outside, Detective Jang is waiting. He's been watching the facility, waiting for the police to respond to the 112 call, the welfare check that forces the cops inside, the thing that makes the whole operation surface in the light of day. He hasn't gotten Jason's signal yet. He's wondering if something went wrong. He doesn't hear the footsteps behind him. A voice, casual, almost pleasant. Is something fun going on here? Chairman Han has arrived at the warehouse. The 112 call goes out. Somewhere across the city, a police substation picks it up. And that's where the first problem reveals itself, because the officer who takes the alert isn't stressed about it. He's grinning. Heavy-set guy, eyebrows freshly tattooed, laughing with his colleagues, like the call just gave him an excuse to do nothing. "Oh, that storage facility," he says. "Prank call. Walk around the block and come home." And he hangs up, with the easy confidence of someone who has done this exact thing before, who has always done this exact thing, and never once been questioned about it. That's the protection Han built into the warehouse from the very beginning. Not just a locked door, but a hand inside the institution that was supposed to stop him. Jason's lethal strategy just got quietly killed in a police break room by a man who is probably proud of his eyebrows. Outside the warehouse, Detective Jang doesn't know any of this yet. He's standing at the exterior doing what he was told, waiting, watching, trying to figure out why the cops haven't shown up. He's already uneasy. What he doesn't know is that the man who walked up behind him isn't a bystander. Han moves with the unhurried calm of someone who planned to be exactly here at exactly this moment. He calls Jang by name, full name, the ever-so-justice-minded detective, the only good cop of the era. The compliment lands like a diagnosis. Jang barely gets a word out before Han wraps his face. Not a punch, not a choke, something worse, because it's methodical. The wrap goes over his nose and mouth and tightens, and Jang's body immediately knows what his brain hasn't caught up to yet. He can't breathe. The internal thought that cuts through the panic is the part that should terrify everyone watching. They know I'm a cop, and they're still doing this. He tries to tear a hole. Just enough space. Just one breath. Han watches without hurry. Twip, whap, slump. 3 beats, and Jang is on the ground, dragged inside, his phone already in Han's hand. Inside the warehouse, Jason finds the lab. Lower level, tucked away, active. Equipment running, workers moving through the chemical haze like they don't fully remember what they're doing there. These are the kids Kang described. The ones the network recruited through the fighting league, got hooked on their own product, and turned into labor. They're not in their right minds. Jason looks at them for exactly 1 second and makes a decision. Not a threat, not a target. Move them upstairs, contain them, don't hurt them. He tells Jeongho to get it done. Then his phone goes to Jang's number, and Han picks up. The conversation that follows is relaxed on Han's end, in a way that is genuinely unsettling. He greets Jason like an old acquaintance who did something mildly stupid. He confirms Jang is alive, then lets that sit there. "So, did you find anything out? I hope it was worth it." Jason tells him to stop talking in circles. Han's response is to explain the reality of the situation. The 112 call is dead, the cops aren't coming, Jason can't use the law anymore. And then the real move. We sent someone to the gym. 1 sentence, delivered like an afterthought. Jason's operation just split down the middle. The warehouse is in front of him, and the gym is somewhere else entirely, under threat from a source he can't see or stop from where he's standing. He can't be in 2 places. He tells Jeongho the priority. Forget the fight, get Jang, get him to a hospital. Jeongho protests immediately. He's not good at rescuing people. That's not his thing. And then almost in the same breath admits that the urge to save someone kicks in almost like instinct. He goes. Across the city, in a high-rise office with nothing of the warehouse's grime, Director Kim is having a different kind of conversation. Composed, professional, the kind of man whose danger you only recognize after the fact. Sitting across from Jung-Hen Lim, who looks like a man who has just finished processing that he has no options. The people around Sejun Im are tougher than expected, Director Kim says, which means they need to show they're more dangerous than they've been acting. The instruction is precise. Go to the key jujitsu. Stab the first person you see. Don't make a scene. He holds something over Lim that goes back to Lim's father. The threat of prison. The threat of being made into a social pariah. And it's enough. Lim shows up at the Ki Jiu-Jitsu, knife in his jacket, and the first person he finds outside the gym is not one of the students. It's the coach. The coach is built like someone who has spent decades absorbing pressure. Cauliflower ears. The kind of frame that was made for it. He takes one look at Lim and something in his posture shifts. Lim draws the knife. The coach disarms him in a breath and puts him on the ground. Crack, wham. Lim's face hits the pavement, and he doesn't get up the same way. The coach says almost conversationally that he doesn't use his fists outside the ring, with one exception: people who play with lives. He's called the cops already. Back at the warehouse, Han walks in with his crew and he's not anxious about any of this. Jeongho, already halfway delighted, says yes, absolutely, come on. And then Han's men come. What follows is not a clean fight. Jeongho fights the way someone fights when they've decided that being hit is not a problem worth solving. He tanks the first shots, calls them mosquito bites, counts them with the focus of a man doing arithmetic, and then starts returning them with compounding interest. Crack. Multiple men converge. Wud. He headbutts one into another. A hit lands clean against the side of his head, and blood starts running, and he doesn't stop. He doesn't slow. He just notes it out loud. Things get different from 2 hits onward. You're making the math harder. And then wham, and another one goes down. By the time he's standing over the last of them, he looks briefly surprised at himself. He forgot to hold back. He finds Jang in the wreckage, face swollen, body barely holding itself together, a cough that brings up blood. Jeongho tells Jason he's taking the good detective to the hospital now. Can Jason handle the one guy? Jason says yeah, just the one guy, standing across the warehouse floor, hands relaxed at his sides, genuinely curious about what happens next. Han lets Jeongho and Jang go without stopping them. He already made the calculation. Jason alone is the thing worth staying for. He tells Jason he didn't intend to go this far, but Jason built his network too well, surrounded himself with people who were too capable, and that forced a recalibration. If Jason is the pillar that holds everything up, the efficient move is to take the pillar down entirely. He smiles when he says it. Then he asks if Jason is ready to show him how a soldier fights. The first move belongs to Jason. Han starts working up to something, references Jason's mother, barely gets the word out, and Jason's answer is a high kick from almost no windup, delivered before the sentence finishes. The hat comes off Han's head. Han registers it in his face, the specific expression of a man recalibrating, the way his hand comes up to where the kick landed. He did a high kick with almost no windup? That's not what he expected, from someone whose background was grappling, not striking. They close distance and Jason is already inside the pattern reading. Back in the day, apparently he was known for something specific. No single pattern, not a style, not a system, just unpredictability organized enough to be consistent. Han can't build a mental map of what's coming because there isn't one to find. A jab lands. Han takes it. He's smiling. He says he held back at the gym with Sejun, adjusted himself all the way down to Sejun's level. This is not that. And then Jason spits in his eye. Han recoils. The shock is real. Not pain, but the violation of it, the sheer contempt of the move. He uses the half-second Han spends reacting to put a hit somewhere it counts. Han recovers and tells him fairly that he's the one who asked how a soldier fights. Jason says he was famous for not having a single pattern. Han says the difference between someone who's been through war and someone who hasn't is that the first person always has a weapon ready. Outside the gym, Lin is still on the ground, with the coach standing over him. He laughs a little, the way people laugh when they've lost badly. He asks the coach if he knows what kind of monster Jason is fighting right now. The coach goes quiet for a moment. Then he says flat, without performance, like a man stating a weather fact. Of all the people he knows, Jason is the cheapest, most underhanded fighter he knows. The panel that follows that line shows Jason inside the warehouse, in profile, calm expression, one hand reaching down to the knife at his belt, the knife that has been on him the whole time, the knife Han doesn't know about. Because that's the difference. Someone who's been through a war doesn't wait for the right moment to find a weapon. They walked in with one. The knife was already in Han's thigh before he finished his sentence. That's what the gym coach meant. Not power, not polished technique drilled into muscle memory. Jason fights like someone who has already decided the rules don't apply to him. and the knife is the proof. Han came into this warehouse expecting a grappler. What he got instead was a striker with no readable pattern, a high kick that came from almost no wind-up, and now a blade buried in his leg before he even registered it was there. Han's own people show up right on schedule. The corrupt cops he positioned as a trap arrive at the warehouse, see the chaos, and do exactly what they were not supposed to do. The taser comes out, and it hits Han, his own men, his own plan, his own trap. The scream that tears through the warehouse isn't Jason's. Han goes down in a sound effect that belongs to someone who has never been on the wrong end of their own operation before. And Jason, the cheapest, most underhanded fighter the gym coach knows, uses every second of it. He doesn't stand over Han and wait. He doesn't deliver a speech. He grabs him by whatever he can reach and drags him out of the building, while Han is still processing the fact that his leg isn't working and neither is his trap. Outside, the cold air, the warehouse still standing behind them. Jason pulls out his phone. He sends the signal. The building goes up in a bloom of fire and noise that swallows the whole block. Kaboom, rolling into boom, rolling into a third concussive wave that rattles windows and lights up the skyline. Han can only watch, injured, on the ground. The operation he built, the drug lab he ran, the evidence of everything he spent years constructing, all of it burning. And the man who lit the match is already walking away from the orange glow with his hands in his pockets, disappearing into the dark before the legitimate police even round the corner. This is what Jason meant when he said actual combat is different from a fight. A fight has rules, combat has objectives. His objective was never to beat Han in a fair match. It was to destroy the warehouse, walk away clean, and leave Han holding the wreckage. He did all three. Somewhere across the city, Jeongho is carrying Detective Jang on his back through the cold. Jang is barely conscious, one eye half open, face a mess, the kind of beaten that takes weeks to stop hurting. He comes around just enough to get words out. He tells Jeongho that Jason walked into a trap, that Han had something planned, that they need to go back. Jeongho keeps walking. There's nothing to go back to. The trap burned with the building. But here's the thing about winning a fight that the whole city is going to see on the morning news. The story of what happened is not yours to tell. By the time the cameras arrive at the smoldering warehouse site, the narrative is already being written by people who weren't there. Han and director Kim work fast. The official version takes shape in hours. An American operative with a violent history and no legal jurisdiction broke into a building, assaulted Korean citizens, and burned the structure to the ground. The underground's lawyers move before Jason can. The police insider who deflected the 112 call is still in place, still useful. The frame tightens around someone who just won the fight of his life. Jason has to disappear. Not because he lost, because winning in a room with no witnesses and then having the building explode behind you does not look like justice. It looks like exactly what his enemies are saying it is. In an office with floor-to-ceiling glass and a television mounted to the wall, a man watches the warehouse footage on the news. The chyron scrolls across the bottom. The reporter's voice fills the room. The man watching starts to laugh. It begins as a short exhale through his nose. Then it builds. Then it is full and open and genuinely delighted. The laugh of someone who has been waiting a long time for a particular kind of satisfaction and is finally receiving it. "That fucking idiot Junwoo," he says to nobody. "Serves you right." His secretary says something. He waves her off without looking. He wants to sit with this. If you have been watching this story from the beginning, you know this face. The vice president. The man above Chairman Han in the hierarchy. The one who reviewed Youngdon's performance and pointed at Sejun with a smile and called him our friend. The man who was already planning the next experiment before the last one finished bleeding. But there is something about this face that you didn't know until now. Go back to a kitchen. A boy with bruises on his arms who doesn't understand why his own house is the most dangerous place he knows. A woman who answers his tears not with comfort, but with ideology. "The weak will always be used by the strong," she says, and her voice is flat, and she closes the door. And in the space between that boy and that door, an older figure, a stepbrother, someone who made the bruises, someone who used a knife. The man laughing at the news broadcast right now is that stepbrother. Older, suited, powerful. The person who taught Junwoo Han what cruelty felt like before Han ever decided to practice it on anyone else. The man Han answers to is the man who first put a blade near him. Whatever Han became, whatever he built and ran and inflicted on others, it grew out of a house where this man already existed. And now that man sits above him in a hierarchy Han thought he understood, watches Han's operation burn on a television screen, and finds it genuinely funny. The mother's ideology was supposed to produce someone who protects the desperate. What it produced instead was two predators stacked on top of each other, one of them still holding the leash. At the police station, Detective Jang sits across a table from someone whose patience ran out before the conversation started. The senior officer above him doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The facts are arranged in front of them like evidence at a scene. An illegal collaboration with a foreign operative, an arson investigation with Jang's name adjacent to it, a 112 call that someone in this department deflected and that Jang cannot explain away. The senior officer wants an accounting. Jang gives him nothing. He doesn't give up Jason's location, doesn't acknowledge anything that would require him to know something he's claiming not to know. His face is a wall. He's been beaten half to death by Chairman Han, extracted by a man who calls mosquito bites a warm-up, and carried bleeding across a parking lot in the dark. And sitting in a police station being yelled at by a superior is, by comparison, one of the easier things he has done this month. When it's over, he stands up, accepts the suspension, and tells them he'll enjoy the vacation. Hajin is outside when the news breaks. She is pacing the kind of pace that doesn't go anywhere, back and forth in front of a building, phone in her hand, the body language of someone trying to keep their breathing even, while everything in their chest is doing the opposite. Jason's name and face are on a broadcast. Arsonist, dangerous, wanted, not threatening. Familiar enough in the way he carries himself that she doesn't flinch when he gets close. He holds out a phone. She takes it. The voice on the other end belongs to Jason. Somewhere on the water, on a boat, in the particular kind of quiet that exists outside city limits when you are hiding successfully. He sounds like someone who slept. She sounds like someone who didn't. Whatever he says to her fits inside the space of a phone call, and the relief that moves through her when she hears him is the kind that doesn't announce itself. It just settles. Her shoulders drop maybe a centimeter. Her grip on the phone loosens slightly. He's fine. That's the thing she needed confirmed above everything else. Across town in the gym, Sejun has been watching Do-yoon try to explain the news coverage to a group of people who don't have enough information to fully process it. The name that keeps coming up is Jason's, what he was, what they're saying he did. The detective they've been told to trust is suspended. The man who had been running the whole counter-operation from somewhere in the background is now on the news for reasons that make him sound like the bad guy. Sejun doesn't say much. He's been inside this long enough to understand that the story being told in public is not the same as the story that actually happened. He keeps training. He goes to the boxing gym and works until his hands are tired and his brain is somewhere past the point of rehearsing outcomes. A trainer there tells him he's come a long way, but he's not ready for the field. Tells him the only person who gets hurt if he goes out there right now is Hajin. Sejun listens in the specific way that means he heard it without agreeing to it. The gym is where he is when Su-hyeon walks in. She comes through the door the way she does everything, without preamble, reading the room in about 2 seconds, landing her eyes on Sejun with the energy of someone who has been told about him and is now doing the calibration herself. She says something about a pretty boy. She is not being especially gentle about it. There is no formal introduction, no explanation of who she is or what operation she's been running or how she fits into the structure that has been protecting him from a distance. She just walks in, takes up space, and looks at him like she's already done the math. For the first time in a long time, the circle is pulling inward. Jason is on the water. Jang is suspended and keeping quiet. Director Kim is watching the frame job take shape and telling himself this is working. And in a hospital room somewhere in the city, Chairman Han is lying in a bed with a knife wound in his thigh and taser burns from his own people, staring at the ceiling, waiting for whoever is coming through that door next. The door opens. The vice president walks in. The man with the leash. He doesn't look concerned. He doesn't look relieved that Han is alive. He looks like a man who has arrived to say something he has been looking forward to saying, and he is taking his time with it, because Han isn't going anywhere. Whatever the ultimatum contains, it lands in that hospital room, like a door closing on everything Han thought he had built. The drug operation didn't die with the warehouse. It already moved. New location, new operative. Production resuming before the smoke cleared. The underground is not a building. It never was. Burn one node, and the rest of the network rats around the damage and keeps running, the way something does when it was designed from the beginning to survive exactly this. The threat is alive. It just changed address. The vice president delivered his ultimatum and walked out of that hospital room with Han still in the bed. Sejun is back in the gym, and Su-hyeon just walked through the door. And whoever she is, whatever she's been running, she didn't show up to observe. Director Kim's frame job is tightening, the drug operation already has a new location, and Sejun is still a confirmed target for an experimental program that didn't pause when the warehouse burned. Jason disappeared into the dark before the city could decide whether he was a hero or a criminal. But the war he started didn't disappear with him. It stayed behind, waiting for Sejun.